But if it is a big problem, we can turn it off. All right. And I think without, do you have anything else, Anthony, to announce?
No, I say we kick it off.
Okay.
We're good.
Without further ado, we'll take it away, Paige.
All right. All right. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm always pleased to be here and see everybody. I see a bunch of people I know, which is really excellent. I'll start off. This talk actually came out of a session that was at Agile Open Northwest, which we have in Seattle. It goes back and forth between Seattle and Portland every year. This year it was in Seattle, and I think Ellis, you were the one that was leading it, correct? I know you might not be able to respond, but um, it was uh, it was talking a lot about neurospicy. Thank you. It was like neurospiciness at work and what works for you and how do you make things more effective and all that sort of thing. It was an amazingly fabulous talk, as a lot of them are at the open space conferences. But then I sat down and I thought, I bet there's a talk in there that I could give and about myself. So that's what I came up with. And first, I'm not a medical expert or even an expert on ADHD outside of my own experiences. So if you want to know more about ADHD, if you think you have it, if whatever, please talk to a medical professional and not just me, although I'll give you my experiences today. Second, it's ADHD is different for everyone who has it. This is just about my experiences as a software developer with ADHD, right? So what I talk about today may be different from what you or others experience, and just sort of like flow with it. I want to make this a discussion, or if you have questions or something, maybe stick them in the chat. I can see the chat window, so maybe I'll address them as I go if they seem relevant to what I'm talking about. And yeah, that's kind of it. So here's the scenario, right? I sit down at my desk in the morning. I've got this fresh cup of coffee, and I'm ready to tackle the day, and I'm going to write some amazing code. And the moment my fingers hit the keyboard, the world just sort of disappears. I'm in the zone, right? I reach over to grab a sip of my coffee, and it's ice cold again. Right? I take a sip anyways, but then I realize I never ate lunch either. Does that sound familiar? Right? If it does, like, this is my life with ADHD. And it's not just about distraction, and it's not about focus or flow. It's sometimes about, excuse me, it's sometimes, see, this is another thing that I do. It's not just about distraction. It's about focus and flow and sometimes forgetting to function. But here's the thing, like, ADHD didn't just challenge me as a developer, it actually made me a better developer. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how a person regulates attention and impulses and activity levels. And it's not really about having no attention. It's about having inconsistent control over where that attention goes. I can think of it sometimes as I can't focus on anything at all, where I'm distracted all the time. And other times I can't stop thinking. I kind of hyper focus. So, it involves this difficulty in starting and finishing tasks. I have trouble with organization. Oh my God, I have so much trouble with organization and memory. Emotional regulation challenges like frustration or rejection sensitivity show up in my ADHD. And I definitely have a need for stimulation. So to me, boredom feels physically painful. It's just nuts to me sometimes how I'm like, I just got to do something. And it's not from a lack of intelligence or effort. It's really just a different brain wiring. So once I kind of understood that, I started finding ways to work with it and not against it. Right? People think ADHD is that inability to focus, and it's not. It's an inability to control focus. My brain doesn't ask me what I want to focus on. It just decides, and I'm kind of along for the ride. One moment I'm in a meeting and I'm nodding along and trying to stay engaged. And the next moment, oh, my brain catches a random thought and I'm off somewhere. Like, what if compilers had feelings? And suddenly I'm down this internal rabbit hole while everybody else keeps talking. And usually I'm sort of continue to nod along like I'm actually hearing or listening. And then there's hyperfocus. So when ADHD brains do lock onto something, they don't let go. Hours sort of disappear for me. Responsibility's gone. I've realized sometimes at 3 that I spent an entire day refactoring one function. And I had, and I committed to getting something totally different delivered. And I missed a really important meeting where I was supposed to be the presenter, right? This is that flip side of distraction for me. And again, it's really hard for me to regulate what I'm focusing on. Um, and so I do that either distracted or hyper focus. And the coffee thing is just kind of a metaphor, right? I'll start a task, I'll forget about it. I'll start a new task, I kind of forget about that. And it's not really forget, it's just move off to something else, right? I like to think those half-finished cups of coffee as code are everywhere in my code, which is a bummer because it makes for writing good, effective code, makes it just a little harder. So to understand kind of where I am, let me tell you a little about where I was. Right. Here are some of the main issues that I was facing. Getting overwhelmed is really easy for me. Um, Now, all of this, I sort of, as I talk about this, I'll talk about before and after. The before is before I was diagnosed, before I was taking medication, which was immensely helpful to me. Um, yeah, I didn't like Adderall, but I like Concerta, and I'm now taking Focalin, which I like a lot. Really, really works really well for me. Um, but but definitely without the medication and even with it, it's really easy for me to get overwhelmed. Big projects feel huge, immense. Too many unknowns and my brain will kind of freeze, right? Like that time I stared at the blank IDE for an hour, unable to start working on a new feature, and not because I didn't know what I wanted to do. It's because I couldn't pick a place to begin, right? Beginning's a really hard thing for me. And then I have memory issues. And I think of my memory like in terms of short-term memory buffer and long-term hard drive, right? So that short-term buffer gets flushed pretty easy and often doesn't write the data to the hard drive. I can't always remember what I did yesterday. I can't remember what the code does. I constantly rereading and redoing. And it's funny, as an aside, when I work with someone that has these sort of things that is not medicated, and a few of us have worked with a person at my last job that is exactly like this. He goes back and goes over and over and over the code and goes, like has to jump into a file and read what it does and then jump to another file and what did it do? And oh, what would that file just say? Like I get really frustrated because I can see how I used to be. Makes it really an interesting practice for me to work with that person. Also, important is a really tough word for me. So that short-term memory is unreliable for me. The context switching destroys my mental state. So the long-term memory, that hard drive is a space for important information, right? The problem is that I have a hard time understanding what is important sometimes. Like I'll make the choice to refactor the entire project to use an eventing system because it will be better in the long run versus working on that feature that I was supposed to get done this week. Right? But which one is, no, it wasn't you, Stephen. Which one is important? Which one, is the most important? it's really tough. My wife will say something like, I need you to get this at the store. And what she's saying is, this is really important that you pick this up today. And what I hear is, when I go to the store, I'll get it, maybe, whatever. And then it goes away because it's not that important that I write it to the hard drive. So this has always sort of caused me an issue. Um, I have a thing called RSD, or rejection sensitivity disorder. I react really strongly to anything that I perceive as rejection. This could be a critical comment on a code review that could kind of set me into this spiral of self-doubt. Um, Being ignored, or one ignored suggestion in a meeting. Like, clearly I'm terrible at my job and they're not listening to me because they either don't like me, or, I'm not effective, whatnot. Right? Irrationally, it's kind of, I know that's not true, but of course, ADHD is not, it doesn't do rational. It does emotions at full volume. So I would go to great lengths to avoid conflict where I could be wrong. This usually meant anything that involved my manager or someone senior to me, or someone that I had to report to. Um, there would be times that I remember not, of course, hyper focusing on something that was not the thing I was supposed to do, and not getting it done, and sneaking out the back door of the office so that I wouldn't have to walk past my boss's office where he might see me and ask me about it. Right. And it was a terrible, terrible way to be, and a terrible way to sort of work, you know. So then that RSD also shows up as a defiance when you tell me no. So, hey, do you think I should refactor this message based into a message-based eventing system? And the answer, no. Well, guess what? I'm going to do it anyways so that I can show you. You can't tell me what to do. Right. And then, of course, that was more time, and it wouldn't really get done because it would go halfway down, and then I'd lose interest or lose focus or whatnot. So that's something I've really had to focus on, and get better at and learn as well. And then, of course, all this leads to imposter syndrome. So years of forgetting conversations, or missing meetings, or not being able to prioritize importance, they all pile up, and they gave me this major case of imposter syndrome. ADHD makes it hard to track my own wins. If I finish a project, I instantly forget how much effort it took, how much my brain I had to put into this, how like the wins of it. Instead, I would think of all the things that went wrong, the times I didn't get it there on schedule, or there were bugs that I had to fix or whatnot. And those things would be written to the hard drive, while the stuff that went well would just get flushed from the buffer. So, and that cycle continued, right? It's funny, as developers, we're asked to do some pretty amazing stuff. And when we're asked, can you do this? Uh, we're kind of conditioned, at least I've always sort of been conditioned as a senior developer. You say, yes, yeah, I could do that. Right? Even if I'm unsure, even if I don't know how to do it, I say yes, because of course we can. We're developers, right? And if we can't do it, maybe they'll hire somebody that can, which reinforces the imposter syndrome, right? The brain brings up failures of the past, wash, rinse, repeat, ad infinitum, ad nauseum, etc. So all of these things, like, really affected not only my life, but really affected the way I worked. Um, Therapy, medication helped immensely, and still do, and highly recommended for anyone that may be dealing with issues. But along with that, finding things that work for me, and ways of working that work for me, have been immensely powerful. So some of those practices, three of them I'll focus on, um, are collaborative programming, right? Mob programming, team programming, pairing, whatever you want to call it, an amazing godsend, right? When I work collaboratively, the team helps me stay on track, especially when my brain wants to chase tangents. Right? The real-time feedback that I get helps me avoid sort of overthinking. If I'm headed off the rails in the wrong direction, I find out immediately there's always someone else there that can help me. I've learned to sort of value that feedback because I'm working in a group with a regular daily basis. And I'm able to gain that psychological safety that sort of smooths out the RSD, right? It used to be that a question on a PR or someone would come up and ask me about the code and they'd say like, why would you use a for loop here? Like, oh man, that would set me off. And uh, um, now, uh, like, you can't ask me that. I'm a senior developer. Don't, you should know better and blah, blah, blah. Right? It took me a long time, but collaborative programming really helped me understand that that question is a question to gain knowledge. It's like, I really want to know why you did this. It's not sort of a condemnation of my ability to code. And so it really made it easier for me to start explaining why I did this and having those conversations that not only made me a better developer, but made the people I was working with better as well. Because if we can have that discussion in a safe way where I don't feel threatened and other people don't feel threatened, and we see this uh, as a knowledge gain, right? We can talk about, well, I know you used a for loop. Could we use is a stream a better thing here, or is a for each here better? Why would we do one versus the other, right? And so when we as a mob or when we mob, like the whole team is responsible for that architecture and code quality. And that shared responsibility really helps override my imposter syndrome as well. Um, I used to get overwhelmed trying to plan and keep track, right? I don't necessarily do that anymore when I'm working with a group. I can either hyper focus and look at this little thing and like, oh, I really want to refactor this and we're going to fix this whole thing and we're going to change this component, et cetera, et cetera. Or I can think of like, man, we need to add all these things and it's got to talk and there's got to be, VR and whatever, like all this stuff. And someone on the team will be, let's just work on this little thing right now. Let's just get this one thing done, right? I can actually hear my friend Steve Quo saying to me, "Let's just start working on this right now," because I've done. Yeah, I hear that regularly from him, and it's very helpful because it really helps keep me on track, helps me move forward, and helps me from getting overwhelmed. Um, my teammates hold context that I don't see or remember. I don't get anxiety about missing a test scenario or which test to write. I often the ability to discuss what I've heard in a meeting with a business means the important stuff that I remember hearing is also supplemented by the important stuff that they remember hearing. Because not only do we mob on the code, but we also sort of mob or collaborate or pair going to meetings. Don't just send one person on your team to a meeting with the whatever. Send two, send three if you can, because we all hear something a little different. We all hear, and then we can, then because I'll come back and be like, well, they said they wanted it blue. And, everybody else will be like, yeah, they said they were thinking about blue, but then they kind of changed it to be more of a light greenish color. I'm like, I didn't hear that at all. So you get those different perspectives. And it really ensures that you have a better understanding of the context of things like, when are we going to be done? What are the next steps? That sort of thing. What exactly are the requirements? What did you hear, etc. So um, in ADHD, there's a thing called body doubling. Body doubling is a strategy where someone with ADHD works on a task in the presence of another person. Right? The presence of another person can act as a subtle motivator, encouraging sort of focus and helping to overcome procrastination and difficulty starting a task. It is not a other person who is sort of regulating or, you know, checking your work or whatever, oftentimes it's just having another person stand or work at a table in the room with me, even if we're not unfortunately like working collaboratively, but there's still another person there. It's crazy, but it works. It helps. So when we mob, though, I get that. And the bigger thing is that we're all there, meaning that we're all focused at the same time on the same work. It makes it much easier to continue. Uh, you know, we take breaks so that you can go off and check your email or whatnot, but it doesn't allow me the time or the ability, I don't know if that's the right word, but it doesn't allow me to sort of like flake off and like, oh, I'm going to check my phone. I'm going to check Facebook and oh, I'm going to respond to this post. I can't do that because we're all focusing together and we're all continuing to move the work forward together. And it also helps me uh, to not get lost, which is really easy thing for me to do when I'm coding alone. What was I doing here? I don't remember. Um and sometimes when I do that, that code becomes a trap. Like working alone, I find myself suddenly lost in my code. Like, why was I going down this path? I know I had a plan, but I'm not sure what it was now. I wrote great tests for this. I wrote it TDD and I wrote it, and here's the code. It's well formed. I've refactored it. I don't know what I was going to do in the end. You know, I don't remember why I started writing this. Um, and so as I'm working collaboratively, there are other people that hold that context. There are other people that help me, go like, oh yeah, we were going to do this. Um, and especially because that not knowing what I was going to do can really become overwhelming for me, especially if I kind of feel this urgency to finish. And then of course, when I feel that urgency to finish, I freeze. And that, doesn't get me any further than just being overwhelmed. So, um, in a mob, when I'm the driver, I only have to focus on being the smart input. I only have to listen to and type what I'm being asked to input into the code. And when I'm in that sort of a navigator position, uh, if I get to that frozen spot of like, God, I don't remember what it was that I was going down a path, I forget it. I have other people that can help me sort of move forward and get out of that frozen spot. And then remember I was talking about the coffee and hyperfocus, right? In a group, because we're all on all the time, it can be easier to exhaust your brain power. You really have to take breaks regularly. And the mobs I've been in, we've always used some sort of Pomodoro timer or some sort of timer to maintain that good brain health. And this is really important because it's really easy to burn out. It's really easy to hyper focus if you're doing this alone, but you really want to be able to sort of reach that like, oh, my brain power is almost empty and I'm about to fall over the edge and become exhausted. Now I take a break, and I'm going to take a break for just a few minutes, just enough to sort of recharge so that I can keep going for the next whatever iteration of the work that we do. Sometimes we don't use a timer. Sometimes it just becomes like, hey, every 3 tests, we'll write 3 tests, we'll make them pass, we'll commit, and then we'll take a break. Or, or we'll just like in really good collaborative groups that I've worked in, we'll be working along and someone will be like, hey, we haven't taken a break in a little bit. Should we do that? Yeah, okay, let's do that. So it's really effective, really helpful. And then often in times on that break, we I used to have rules that I would try and follow. I still kind of do. I like to think if you're going to take a break, step away from your computer, right? Don't look at your work that you're working on. Go outside. If you can't go outside, try looking outside, right? Take a quick walk around the building. Um, it's really important, you could take your time to check your email, or, sometimes we would use it to sort of like call people or respond to people that came when we were working, and we asked them to wait until we got to the break. That's fine. But it's really not a time, it's a time not to think about the tasks and the work that you're doing. And oftentimes, sort of like those shower moments when you're just sort of like sitting and thinking about stuff and you're like, oh, I get it. Oftentimes that happens on that break. You relax and you start to not think about the work, and suddenly that whatever, answer that you might have been stuck on comes to you. So really recommend that. Um, as a practice for actually writing code, TDD has been the one thing that has helped me advance in my abilities as a developer, probably the most. Right. So ADHD loves instant feedback, and TDD gives me that. Right. You write a tiny test, you see it fail, you fixed it, and bam, dopamine hit. Woo! And to the point that, and I think some of you have worked with me when we do this, we'll like write a test and see it fail, and we're like, woo, failing test. And then we fix it and like, woo, passing test. There's definitely sort of a gamification, but that dopamine hit of like, okay, here I am. Now let's keep going because this was exciting. I hate debugging. Debugging requires me to hold on to too much in my head, keep all that context, and it's really easy for me to kind of like get lost as I'm stepping through, especially if I'm going through lots of code. I get overwhelmed as I step from line to line to line. TDD for me means that I rarely debug when I'm writing code. I use very small, simple steps to drive that development. It requires me to architect it in a way that it's easy to test and easy to follow. So if there's, the only time I think I've debugged is like lately in the last maybe, I don't know, decade, is when there's a defect that, I'm trying to figure out why someone probably didn't write a test around that or something to that effect. But it's when you're really doing a deeper investigation. It's not about writing code and seeing if it works. Um, and then I'll write a test that mimics that defect, right? And so that when that test passes, I can ensure that defect has been fixed. Might require more than one test, but really it's so um, it's so hard for me to hold all that context in my head as I keep going, especially because I'll try and think like, okay, this variable's true, and then I step through another 10 lines of code and I'm like, okay, this variable's false. Now I've immediately flushed the buffer on that first variable and I don't remember what it was or what the value was. So TDD really helpful for that. TDD really reduces my mental load. I write a test that covers a very small unit of code. It tests one thing and one thing only. I know all the inputs and I know all the outputs, and that reduces this cognitive complexity. Um, if I feel I'm getting overwhelmed because the code I'm working with, the function or the method or whatever is too complex, that's usually a flag for me that I need to start refactoring it into something simpler again. Um, there's no big upfront design. Uh, this is the worst thing for me. Big upfront design is terribly hard. TDD breaks big scary work into safe tiny steps. Each test is a checkpoint. Um, I don't have a sample to show today, but maybe later. But I don't have one in here. So yeah, that's another talk. But I appreciate the question. I'll see now I'm off on a little tangent again. Let me get back to that and we'll talk about that maybe at the end. Anyhow, so the big upfront design, like each test is a checkpoint and I can kind of stop any time and not get lost. Oftentimes, a really nice thing I do is I'll leave a failing test when I go to lunch. So that when I come back, I run all the tests and, oh, this one failed. Oh yeah, because we were working on this right here. Sometimes, there's other ways of keeping track, or when we take a break is probably a better one. When we take that 5-minute break and everybody gets up to walk away, we'll leave a failing test. Really easy. Because then we don't come back and go like, "Ah, where were we?" Right? I don't need to hold that entire design of the function or the code or the task in my brain before I start work either. Right? I still believe in roadmaps. You have to kind of know where you're going, but that's different than designing that entire architecture up front. And for the most part, if we spend that day doing big upfront design, day is a nice term because it's often longer than that. When we actually start to write the code, what happens to that design? Usually goes right out the window. Halfway through, we are totally in a different place with the code than we expected because of things we found. So I am not a fan of the big upfront design. Also, really interesting that thing that was pointed out to me um, is that I have trouble seeing the end result. Even if, for instance, I'm a model railroader. I have a model railroad in the garage, and well, I have an idea of what I want it to be, and I have images, and I've done the CAD thing with it. I've laid out what I expect it to be. It's really hard for me to get there. I've heard it described as the sort of the normal thinking is like I picture what the end is, and then I sort of slice the tasks back till I get to the beginning so that I know here are all the things that I need to do. And then I go forward and do this second, third, fourth, fifth. My problem is I can't always see how to get from what I think I want to the beginning, and therefore I can't follow that forward. I can't split those tasks. So TDD works really well for that as well. Um, and then my tests are requirements as code. I write my tests, each requirement that I have, each tiny partial part of the requirement is a test. When I've written and passed all the tests for all of the requirements, I'm done. And that doesn't just mean that, that I write the test of like, when I pass in two numbers, it should return the sum of those two numbers. That's one test. There's an unwritten requirement there of what if I pass a string? What if I pass, there's maybe we don't write that in sort of requirement documents, but that's a requirement. And so it requires a test. Maybe I should throw an exception. Should I just, maybe it should log, whatever. Those are all tests that I write to show that my code is doing what it should do. And so for me, there's less of a chance of forgetting or getting overwhelmed by that amount of work because I no longer think, I think I finished that requirement. I can look at it and say, if there's a test for it, then I did it. If not, then I write one. Right? Or I go ask, whoever, talk to the other team members, and I talk to the client or customer or, program manager or whatever and say, I'm not sure what to do here. What's the requirement around this? Okay. That didn't do what I thought it was going to do. All right. There we go. Discovery trees are really an important thing that have helped me sort of learn how to, I don't want to say organize, but figure out tasks. They came from when I worked at Primera Blue Cross, which is our Washington State Blue Cross insurance company. And they started out as sort of notes to ourselves to work on stuff to do later. And it really quickly became an effective tool for managing the tasks for the team. It comes from Woody Zool, who said, "We discover the work by doing the work." It's not about designing and architecting and doing this big upfront design type of thing. It's really about, so for instance, it's finding the quickest thing we can do to start working and doing that. So if you look at the image here, right, we use Windows and stickies because it was really easy. But we would start out with like, okay, here's the actual requirement at the top, deploy to the Windows Store, I think is what this one says. What are some things we need to do with that? Well, the first four are set up a Git repo, create a project in VS Code or VS Visual Studio. Yeah, that's what we were doing. You know, write the build documents and then release it. Right? Okay, those are four things. Which one of those is there one of those that we can that's important that we can start on right now? And if so, we stop. We don't design anything else. We just like, okay, this first one we can set up a Git repo right now. Let's do it. Like a bias towards action. We'll just start working on it. Right. Um, if not, then we pick the one that's most important and we'll sort of, what are some things underneath that? Right. So um, it gives us a real visual clarity. If you look at the image, you can see if I tell you that we have finished the ones that are crossed out, what percentage are we of the known work? What percentage are we done? Probably a little more than 50%, because at the very top level, the two are crossed out, and then down below, lower to the right, you know, there's another one or two that are crossed out. So that's a little more than 50%. This is something that is really easy to get an idea of the work that we know that we need to do right now. What percentage are we done? We're probably about 50% done. If we think of something else, oh gosh, we forgot to add this. Okay, well, we just put another sticky at whatever level it goes at, top level, mid level, wherever. And then when it becomes the next most important thing that the application doesn't do, we go work on that. Right. So again, we don't have to do this big upfront design. It really makes it easy for me to decide where to start. We do the smallest thing possible. And I talked about this when I was talking about TDD as well. We break down things so that they're so small that I can't get overwhelmed. And we do one twig at a time. You know, as we break this down, we come up with things and we say, is this something we can do in a couple hours or half a day? If so, let's stop putting Post-its on the tree and let's start working on this one thing. You know, and if we find other things, okay. You know, sometimes we'll get stuck or we'll get blocked or whatever. Okay, I don't know if I have a picture of those, but we'll put a little note in the corner or a little smiley face or whatever, and we'll move on to the next one. We'll come back to it. You know, it's really about that bias towards action and find a small thing that we can start moving forward with right now. And then I talked about the task tracking. It's really easy for me to keep track of the things that I know that I'll have to do and add things that I discover as I'm doing the work. We do the work in a last responsible moment way, not last possible moment. That's not effective, nor is it's not good. But last responsible moment is. And you can start looking at, here are the tasks we need to do next. Is it the last responsible moment to do this one? If it's yes, then yes, we got to work on it. If no, we could probably put that off and do this other one first, or this other one's got more importance or whatever. Let's put that off and wait until the last responsible moment. Because chances are our knowledge is going to change and our understanding is going to change between now and the last responsible moment. So I really have found discovery trees to be super effective. So for years, I thought that ADHD was something I had to overcome, right? But the truth really is that ADHD led me to practices that don't just help me. They actually make the work better for everyone that I work with. Very small steps, externalized thinking, structured collaboration. These aren't just survival strategies for me. They're really solid development practices that create clarity. They instill quality. They reduce cognitive load, and they make the team stronger, both in terms of knowledge and ability and and the way they act as a team. So, yeah, I forget my coffee sometimes, but I've learned that, how to work with my brain instead of against it, and I'm fine with that. That's much better. Uh, so that's what I have. Thank you. I put all of my talks online. You can find them on my site. I've got the PDFs of the slides up there if you want. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or Blue Sky. Um, yeah, that's what I got. Yeah, Rob, you have your hand up, bud?
Yeah, I had a question while you were talking about design. I was wondering if you've ever tried CRC cards and whether that would help.
Too much process.
Ttoo much.
Uh, uh,
Oh,
well, and maybe not. The answer is no, really, I haven't. I know of them. The reason that I don't know that I've tried them is because like Discovery Trees works well for me, and
hmm.
it evolved. It evolved, and it's very simple, and um,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can definitely see Discovery. In fact, I'm stealing Discovery trees. I was today years old when I learned about Discovery trees from this Paige Watson guy.
yeah,
And I'm really happy with that. I'm stealing. But I was thinking in CRC cards more in terms of like doing a little bit of upfront design just to kind of confirm that you're headed in the right direction. I think it was something you said about not knowing where to start.
yeah.
And that's where CRC cards have helped me before, where we kind of hash out with the team. Very lightweight. It's not supposed to be heavy. It's supposed to be
Okay,
just a little game. And then you come up with a couple of things that you can then take and use to start doing test-driven development on. I've got this public method. I've got this thing that this particular class does. I can write a test for that, right? So it just gets us started when we're not right quite sure. Okay, what am I writing a test on? Am I writing a test on, who's going to do this work for me? Is it this object over here that exists already, or is it something new? That kind
yeah,
of thing. So try it out.
okay, all right. I will. I will. Well,
Maybe
no,
we
maybe.
can
Yeah,
take we can chat offline sometime about if somebody explained it to you so that it sounds a little heavy,
yeah.
then they're doing it wrong.
Okay, all right. And I'd love to, honestly, I'd love to learn more. I always like to think that, you know, I know the best way to write software right now. If there's a better way to write software, let's figure out what it is and let's do it. I am always open to learning and growing and continuing to find a better way. So, yeah, that'd be awesome. Other thoughts or questions? I saw there were some, but I didn't really address them, I don't think. Wow, okay.
Actually, Paige, I got a question for you.
Yes.
You've been giving this talk a little bit, and I know that sometimes you have some follow-up conversations with it. What are some of the impacts that you've noticed from sharing the story?
Um, so first, it surprised me and still kind of does how much people sort of find it helpful. How about that? Right? I know there's well, I don't know, but to me it seems like there tends to be more sort of neurospicy people in development type jobs. But of course, I haven't worked in a lot of other, career industries, whatever. So I couldn't go like, well, that's true. And then of course I've tried to look up some information on that, and it's very smattering of stuff here and there that may or may not be fully correct. But it sure seems that a lot of the people that I've worked with and that I work around are working on issues. And so it always surprised me, like, why don't we talk about this more? Why don't we, we talk about what's a better way to work, but we don't actually talk about why is it a better way to work. And so that's been really kind of amazing. Um, yeah. I don't know what else. There's like, it's funny because I knew when I learned to do test-driven development, when I learned to work collaboratively, and then discovery trees kind of came out of that, and Pomodoro and all those sort of things. Like it was like, oh, these are great. These are great. Let's do them. And it never really dawned on me why I was so drawn to them, right? And I know there are people that have a very hard time working like pairing or mobbing, especially, right? And it's I hesitate to say it's not a an introvert versus an extrovert thing. I've worked with some very amazing introverted developers who often will have to say, you know what, I'm going to go sit over there for a few minutes while we're mobbing, and everybody goes, yeah, okay, see you in a few, whatever. Like that's just how we work, and they go and they recharge and they come back and they do some more work and it's awesome and whatnot. So it's not that. Um, but there are people that don't either they don't understand it, they don't feel comfortable, they've whatever. And so whereas I kind of had this idea of like, oh, this is the best thing ever, everybody should do it, right? It's sort of in talking about this more and more, it's dawned on me like, oh, well, maybe it's just me, you know, maybe there's a lot of us that find it super effective and helpful, but maybe I love it so much because it's me. You know what I'm getting at? Yeah. There was no real other like mind-blowing sort of moments. That there's little ones.
So one thing I wanted to contribute is that I really lean into small batches and limiting work and process. Like
Oh,
I
yes.
hammer on limiting WIP with my teams constantly. We
Yes.
use a visual Kanban board that has WIP limits on it and gets angry red when you exceed them. And the teams do sometimes, but those two things in combination have helped me get to done more often and get the reward of being it done and then want to do it again and repeat the cycle and go through it over
Yeah.
and over and over. TDD definitely helps in the small while implementing a feature, and doing small batches of a feature in a small batch and then limiting WIP.
Yes.
Both really help me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I think, well, TDD helps me sort of organize and do the tasks to get the work done in small batches. But I can't, like I I can still do TDD if you assign me 14 different stories, but I can still get really overwhelmed, right? Even if I'm not working on them all at the same time, or the team isn't working on them all at the same time. It's let's do one thing at a time, right? You really need like your optimal WIP limit is one. As long as you find the most important thing to work on and that the app doesn't do right now, let's do that, and then let's find the next most important thing to work on that the app doesn't do. And yeah, it's really, I agree, Dave. It's really easy for me to get overwhelmed, even just knowing that I have this stack of work, right? So, which collaborative help works is collaborative programming works really well because I don't feel that it's all on me. And we can all kind of commiserate of like, God, we've got so much work to do. And then there's inevitably someone that says, okay, let's take this one at a time. Let's find the most important thing. Let's start on that. So, Sumesh, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, yeah, thank you for this talk. This has been actually a really helpful overview.
Thank you.
I've never been formally diagnosed, but I think I do definitely have some ADHD tendencies. So this is definitely some things to keep in mind for me. I wanted to ask you a question, sort of coming at it from another angle. You mentioned how, before you started to get a handle on your ADHD, it sort of affected your relationship with your supervisors, your managers, project managers, things like that. So I was curious, what in your ideal situation, what kind of things would you hope for from your project managers or anyone above you? Like, would you rather, for example, that they check in with you regularly and keep you accountable, or would you rather they just sort of be like, okay, let me know if you need anything, and just sort of be hands off? What has worked best for you? Because I think,
Yeah.
the environment, beyond just your team, just, and the work culture, I think can be either conducive or not to people with ADHD. And I'm still trying to figure out what works best from, or what I should look for, or what I should ask for from my managers. So yeah.
So I'll like from my standpoint, right? My managers, the people that I was trying to not be in conflict or not like escape from, they didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't them, it was all me. Right? It was me putting my fears and my RSD and all that stuff and my imposter syndrome on me. Right? So that's important first. The I'm just going to check in with you once in a while to see how you're doing. Oh, that is the most horrible thing for me ever. Yeah, because I'm going to say fine. I'm going to hide that the fact that I'm lost or behind, or that I spent yesterday down the rabbit hole of trying to get the compiler to talk. Like whatever. I would much rather have like, well, this is why again that the collaborative team works so much better for me. I'd much rather have all of us there and let's radiate all the information all the time, right? I don't want my manager or my product manager or whoever is the customer. I don't want them showing up once a week or twice a week. I want them there every day. And because when I work in these small chunks of work and we are continually, let's write some code, let's write a test, write the code to fix it, commit it, and push it out to production. Let's do that many times a day. And when you work in that way and you have that radical communication of like, here's where we are, this is a discovery trees with another great one. Anybody could walk by, and now we have them online, on Miro or Mural or whatever you use, right? Anybody can look at them and quickly get an idea of, oh, here's where they're at. That doesn't mean it's a definitive or scientific measurement of the work that you have done and have left to do. What it means is you get a quick idea, and if you need to have a deeper discussion, you go talk to the team about it. This is what I want, because then what happens is that those people who are not always with the team start to see the information more often, start to understand the way that you're working, start to get an idea when they ask like, where's it at? And you say, well, we're having a problem with this. They can see that you've done all these other things and you get them out really quickly. And when you say that there's an issue that's blocking it, might slow you down, oh, you're not just a stupid developer trying to make up an excuse so that you can be lazy. You're actually telling them the truth because they see that the work is happening, at a really rapid pace, even if it's little tiny chunks, right? So to kind of wrap that back around to your question, I want them to be there all the time, anytime, all the time. In fact, when we were working on this one project, a few of us here, we had, and I still do this. We've done this for a long time, remotely. We open up a Zoom room and we leave it open all day, like we're in the office together. You don't have to, and it's cameras on. You don't have to have your camera on all the time. You don't have to be in front of the camera all the time. But the whole idea is that you make that Zoom room open and you stay there and you have those conversations like you would be in the office. And when anybody has a question or you need to talk to anybody, you get them to jump in and you have that discussion right then. You don't there's no asynchronous email chat, wait, okay, reply, no, that's not what I meant type of thing, right? All this sort of, again, that like radical information, sort of vomiting to everybody, everything, it only makes us faster and only grows our understanding of what we as a development team need to make, and to the business where we're at and what what we're dealing with, and those conversations make things better. So that was a long way around, but
No, that was great. Thank you so much.
okay. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Okay, Moss, there was a question about TDD, and I'd be interested to hearing like where the question came from, what
Was
yeah,
it the
chat.
cold start question, or was it a different?
It was in the
question?
chat, and
Because
it was
there's a bunch of TDD stuff in the chat.
okay, let's
Back
go.
scrolling back. And hi from maybe across Seattle.
Yeah.
There's way too much stuff in the chat. I don't know how you managed to stay focused on your presentation with all
I
the
didn't.
side chatter. No, you did. You did.
Well, you
You were
just move to
clear as a
the next point on the slide,
Yeah.
one step in front of the other.
I couldn't help but see the little icon on the chat thing just
Well, you can
constantly
close
calling
the
for my
chat,
attention.
You can
Oh,
do
the
that.
chat window was closed, but
Oh, okay.
that was even more distracting because maybe it's just
Tear
my
it off
version
and
of
put it somewhere
Zoom.
else.
Yeah.
Distractions from apps are just, they're a thing.
Yeah. They're the worst.
That's again why I like the Pomodoro when I work, because it's very helpful. And we had like sometimes, and I think Jay Bazuzzi now has like a mob roles type of sort of framework where you can look at his website and he describes all the different roles that exist in a mob, in a collaborative group. One of the ones that worked really well for us, that we found ourselves sort of just falling into without even knowing it, was a sheriff. So if there was 4 or 5 of us at a actually here, let me share this. Okay, are you seeing that? Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. So this picture, I'm gonna mess up all my slides. This picture here is a bunch of us mobbing, the early days of mobbing, right? But actually, the gal in the back, she's playing the sheriff. She actually, and usually you can see just to the left of me, there's another mob facing the other direction. The sheriff kind of sits near the back. They're part of the rotation, but their job is to address anybody that comes up to try and interrupt. And so, like, if as someone, she would be aware of someone sort of making their way over towards the mob, and she'd be like, "Hey, can I help you?" And they'd be like, "Well, I really have to talk to Paige because we were wondering about this." And she's like, "We have about 15 minutes left in our rotation, and then I will let him know, unless it's really important. But if it's not, I'll let him know and he'll come see you, or whatnot." Like, their job was to sort of protect the flow of the group, and the rest of us didn't really have to worry about that. And so there was even less sort of distraction, uh, um, and it felt okay. There wasn't an urgency, like when the manager came, there wasn't necessarily an urgency of like, oh, here comes the boss, everybody stop working and talk to that person. No, there was a person that would be like, I noticed you're coming over. What do you need to talk to someone, or did you just want to see where we're at? And sometimes the sheriff would be like, "Oh, here's our discovery tree," and they would like go and they kind of step over and explain to the manager or the business or whatever. Here's what we're working on right now. You know, we can give you a demo in 10 minutes when our Pomodoro timer's done. Whatever, you know. because that's how we worked. But yeah, that I like that, Sheriff. And also then, yeah, I don't know how I got there. I don't know how I got there. Brandon, what do you want me to repeat? Oh, all of it? Yeah, okay. Jay retired from Tableau and Salesforce about 2 months ago. Yes. Oh, the sample of TDD. Okay, well, yeah, let's see if I have something I can show. So, is anybody not has anybody not seen TDD before? That gonna try and find a project. How about that? Oh, I could use Shopcrafter. So when and I'm just going to totally contrive an example as we go here, okay? So I have this sort of it's a shopping cart and register, and actually I haven't run it in a while, so yeah, of course then I'm gonna have to apply run, see if that works. All right, well, maybe I won't use Shopcrafter. The important part is that the tests run. Nope. All right, hold on. Let's try another one. Oh, I'm going to use this if that's all right. Ellis, this is something Ellis and I were working on for a while, so we'll finally get back to it. How about that? So this is basically just Minesweeper, right? And of course, then I have to run all the tests to see if they actually still work. Nope. Why don't the tests work? All right, well, this is why we don't do live demos. Oh, wait a minute. Let's wait till it finishes indexing. When I do TDD, I'll give you the explanation. So I don't know where we were on this. Ellis, do you have any idea if you're available to talk? Ellis is probably calling him from work, shirking his duties. But I'm gonna write a very simple test. And that simple test is going to test a small change in functionality. And that functionality, I don't want it to be huge. I want it to just be simple. I want it to be easy. Yay, okay. Whew. All right, so I have tests that run. This is the first part. Run all your tests. Always, whenever you open a new project, the very first thing, run all the tests. Make sure they all pass. If they don't, then you've got bigger problems. So I don't know where we were, but say that I have a oh, okay. I have a game and I have cells, and like in Minesweeper, that remember that the Windows thing where you have mines and you have hidden cells, and those cells have a mine or they don't, and they show a flag or whatnot. And so so I have a grid, and it's a grid of X number of cells. Say let's see if I can, I'm trying to contrive an example here, but let's come up with a test. State grid tests. Okay. All right. And so I like to, here's another nice thing. I like to have my tests on the left side and my code classes or whatever the unit under test on the right, because it's reading. The priority stuff goes on the left. For me, tests are first class citizens, and I use the test to write the code. So I want to read the test first. So let's see, say that I want to, okay, I'm just going to make something up. So I use my handy dandy sort of template, and this test returns grid name. It's I don't know. I'm just, again, making this up. But so I'm going to make a grid, and I create, and it's got one row and one column and no mines, right? And so, and then I make a grid. And now when I do this, I do the arrange, act, and assert idea. So I'm arranging all of my test here, and then I act, and then I assert. But I do it so. So I'm having I have a grid object, and I do one action. So that means I want to, in this case, I'm going to say get name. At this point, the get name is red because it doesn't exist, right? So when I have a failing test, and that includes compilation failures, I'm going to then immediately fix that. Oops, so if I can figure out, so I'm going to create the method. There's that. It's going to return a string. And then now I have a passing test again, so or at least the compilation error. So now I'm going to introduce a variable, and then I'm going to assert, and I assert that grid name.
By the way, I forgot to mention earlier, but the Zoom meeting, I believe, is set to end at 5:50.
Okay, so I have like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get this done. I promise.
No pressure.
Sorry, I
Don't
mean
put any
to,
pressure on me. I'm not going to get overwhelmed. All right, so
Good thing you took a small step, Paige.
yes, and so here's the idea, right? I only have one action. This is really important in my tests. I don't do a lot of things. I don't I'm not going to create the grid and then set the name, and then I'm going to get the name, and then I'm going to, add one to the variable, and then I'm going to, I'm not going to do all those. I'm only going to do one thing that's an action that returns or does something that I can measure in the test. So now I'm expecting that the grid name is equal to foo. And then, so for the easiest thing that I usually do, we'll just return foo.
Wait. You
Yes.
forgot to watch the test fail first.
I did.
Yeah, let's see it.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's
I needed
okay.
closure. I need closure.
That's okay. So then I run all the tests.
this isn't enough parentheses for closure.
Yay. And so I run all the tests, and I
Gotcha.
see that I expected foo, and it was no, okay. So now I'm going to fix the test, or fix the code so that so that the test passes. And I run the tests, and yay, the test pass. And then I'm going to would usually commit here because it's now committed, or it's now ready for a commit. Now I will fix the name up here to better reflect what I'm actually testing. And then I can come down here and actually create a new test. Now I'm going to test that it returns bar. Hey, and this fails. So now I want to somehow change the code so that both the tests continue to pass. So say let's add a bar here. Okay, and add a string is the fourth parameter. We're going to create yes, and we're going to call that default value. Default value is actually going to be foo, and we're going to try to test and I refactor that. Okay, now let's run run them. Oh, I still returns foo. So let's come up and see what it did here. Up here, I have a grid name, but I have no I didn't do anything with it. So let's create a private string there. I don't like that it makes things static.
Weird.
That's kind of just a oh, I see what the problem is. The problem is that because I'm calling create, so I need to come down here to the private.
You also can't use this because you're still in the static method.
Right,
there,
but down here I can
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry. Apologies.
all right, and I can assign that as a parameter, and then here now here's in the static create because we're using the object knows how to instantiate its own. Yes, triangulating most definitely, and I'll pass in grid name there, and still we're going to run the tests, and still need to. Why is that one? Because it makes a flaggable. Oh, I see what that. Now I've got to fix a bunch of other stuff. All right, so now it still returns foo, but down here now I have and now I can go this dot grid name. Ta-da! And now both my tests pass. Both of my names returns bar and returns foo. And so now, if that's a functionality that I want, I've added it in my code. I and then the next question is there a test I can write for this returns name that will fail? Right? Maybe I could try passing null. Maybe that's a requirement that when I pass null, it throws an exception.